You know those moments, right? When you really connect with someone, feel totally understood.
Yeah.
Where that feeling, it's not magic. It's built on communication. And today we're really digging into well, the core of how that works.
Mm.
Our goal here is to give you a bit of a shortcut, to understanding why sometimes messages just click and other times they just get lost.
And we're actually pulling some fascinating insights from nursing practice. We've got this textbook chapter, and you might think, nursing, how does that apply?
Right.
But nurses, they have to be masters of communication, often under pressure, building trust fast with all sorts of people in really emotional situations.
That's a great point.
So the skills they rely on, they turn out to be pretty universal lessons, actually, stuff anyone can use.
Exactly. This isn't just theory. We're looking for stuff you can actually use, ways to sharpen your own skills, maybe avoid some common traps, and also get a handle on how culture, shapes the way we connect. So whether it's work stuff, family stuff, this should be helpful.
Definitely. So where do we start? Well, the first thing to grasp is that communication, it's a process, not just a single event.
Okay, a process.
And there are models to help picture it. Like Berlow's model is a good starting point. It breaks it down.
Okay, Berlow's. So how does that work? It starts with a stimulus. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Something happens. Something triggers the need to communicate. Could be anything, really. A question pops into your head. You have an idea, maybe just a feeling.
Got it. So that stimulus makes a sender, that's the person talking, formulate a message.
Right. And how well that message works. Well, it depends a lot on how clearly the sender puts it together, encodes it, and then how easily the receiver can unpack it, decode it.
And the message itself has to travel somehow, right? That's the medium.
That's the medium, yeah. Could be spoken words, could be a text, email. Could even be, your body language.
Okay. But it doesn't stop there.
No way. Because then you get feedback, the receiver's response.
Ah, okay. And this feedback loops, that's really important, isn't it? It's not just saying,
It's critical. It's how the sender knows if the message actually landed the way they meant it to. It's like
a compass for the conversation.
Exactly, a communication compass. And, the source material really drives this home miscommunication. It's not just awkward.
Right.
It's a huge cause of errors, even serious ones, like in healthcare settings. So getting communication right, it's a vital skill for everyone, not just professionals.
Okay, so we have this basic model. Stimulus, sender, message, medium receiver, feedback. Seems straightforward. But we all know conversations go sideways sometimes. Messages get garbled. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's rarely that simple in real life, is it? There are all these factors that act like filters. They can distort the message on both ends, sending and receiving.
Filters. Okay, like what kind of filters?
Well, we can group them. Think personal factors, environmental ones, and then relationship factors.
Okay, let's take personal factors first. What falls under that?
That's all the internal stuff, like your emotions at that moment. Are you feeling stressed, happy, annoyed? That definitely colors how you interpret things.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
If you're having a bad day, even a simple question can sound like an accusation.
Totally. And it's not just mood. It's your social background, your past experiences, your culture, the language you speak, even your knowledge level.
How so, the knowledge level?
Well, if someone's talking about something using jargon you don't know or assuming you have background information you don't, that message isn't getting through clearly, right? It's filtered by your cognitive state.
Right. Okay, so those are personal filters. What about environmental factors? Stuff outside of us.
Yeah, this is the context. The physical setting matters. Trying to have a serious talk in a loud, crowded place, not ideal.
Definitely not. Privacy too, I guess.
Huge factor. If you feel like you might be overheard, you're probably going to be less open, less honest.
Makes sense. And it's not just the physical room, is it? The source mentions societal factors too.
Yeah, things like social norms, expectations about how people should interact in that situation, what's considered polite or too direct or, that varies.
Okay. And the third category was relationship factors.
Right. This looks at the dynamic between the people communicating. Are they equals, like friends or colleagues? That's called a symmetrical relationship.
Okay, equal footing.
Or is there a difference in status or power, like a boss and employee? Or, in the textbook example, a nurse and a patient. That's a complementary relationship.
Ah, the power dynamic. That must really influence things.
It absolutely does. In those complementary relationships, the person perceived as having less power might might hesitate to speak up or might phrase things differently. They might not feel safe being fully direct.
So if you're in the position of, say, more authority, you really need to be aware of that. Check your own assumptions.
Critically important. The source really stresses guarding against your own biases in those situations, making an extra effort to ensure the other person feels heard and respected. It's easy for misinterpretations to happen otherwise.
Okay, wow. Lots of filters. So we've talked a lot about the words, the verbal part. But you mentioned body language earlier, the nonverbal stuff. Our source says that's a huge piece of the puzzle.
Huge doesn't even cover it. It often speaks louder than the words. Some studies estimate that the majority, maybe 60, 70, even up to 90% of the meaning we get from an interaction comes from nonverbal cues.
90%?
Yeah.
Seriously. That's almost everything but the words.
It's staggering when you think about it. So, yeah, while the words carry the explicit content, our bodies, our faces, our tone, they're constantly sending signals.
Okay, so what are we talking about specifically? What kind of nonverbal signals should we be tuning into?
The source breaks it down nicely. First, body behaviors. Think posture, are they slumped or upright? Gestures, are they open or closed? How are they moving? A slumped posture might signal sadness or low confidence.
Makes sense. What else?
Facial expressions, obviously. Smiles, frowns, maybe a tight jaw, a raised eyebrow. They flash emotions instantly. Then there's eye cast, not just eye contact, but the quality of it. Is it steady, darting, a suspicious glance?
Yeah, the eyes definitely tell a story. Keep going.
Okay, then voice-related behaviors. This isn't what you say, but how you say it. Tone, pitch, how loud or soft, the rhythm.
Like someone speaking really fast and high-pitched might be anxious?
Could be anxiety, yeah. Or excitement. A flat monotone voice might signal boredom or depression. Then there are the observable autonomic physiological responses.
Oh, okay. Sciencey term. What does that mean?
Yeah. It's just those involuntary body things, like suddenly sweating, blushing, breathing rapidly, going pale when a certain topic comes up. Things the body does automatically in response to emotion.
Like a built-in lie detector, sometimes.
Sort of. And finally, personal appearance, grooming, clothing choices. It all contributes to the nonverbal message someone sends.
So all these signals are happening constantly, alongside the words. What happens when they don't match up? The source calls this incongruent communication.
Exactly. When your words say one thing and your body language or tone says another, that's an incongruent message. Also called a double message or mixed message.
Okay. And the opposite is congruent.
Right. Congruent is when everything aligns. You say you're happy and you look and sound happy. That feels authentic. That's usually what we want.
But incongruent, that's the tricky one. Like the classic, no, I'm fine, said through gritted teeth.
That's the perfect example. The source actually gives a really good vignette about this with a mother and daughter.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about that.
Okay, so the daughter wants to go out. Her mom isn't feeling well. The mom says verbally, oh, sure, go have fun. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine alone.
Okay, it sounds permissive.
But her nonverbals are totally different. Maybe she sighs heavily, looks downcast, moves slowly. Everything about her body language is screaming, don't leave me, I feel bad.
Oof. Talk about a mixed message. The poor daughter is stuck. Words say go, vibes say stay. Creates guilt, right?
Totally creates guilt and confusion. So what do? The source suggests addressing the incongruence directly, but gently.
How?
The daughter could say something like, Mom, I hear you saying it's okay for me to go, but you look kind of down. I'm wondering if you really feel okay about it.
So you reflect back both parts of the message,
Huh?
the words and the nonverbals you're observing. You bring the mismatch out into the open.
Exactly. It allows for a more honest conversation about what's really going on because, as the source points out, actions, including those nonverbal actions, often reveal the true feelings more reliably than words, especially in these mixed messages.
Actions speak louder than words. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. The source talks about therapeutic communication techniques. Now, therapeutic sounds, clinical, like for therapists.
It does have that clinical origin, definitely. In nursing, it's about communication that's goal-directed, focused on the patient's needs and understanding.
But you said these are useful for everyone.
Absolutely, because the core principles behind therapeutic communication, things like empathy, really listening, seeking clarity, these are the foundations of any good communication, whether it's with a patient, a colleague, your partner, your kids, anyone.
Okay, I'm sold. Let's break down some of these techniques. The first one mentioned is kind of surprising. Silence. How is silence a technique? It usually feels awkward.
It can feel awkward, especially if we're not used to it. We often feel pressure to fill every gap. But intentional silence can be really powerful.
How so?
It gives people space to think, to process what's been said, to gather their thoughts or emotions before responding. It shows you're patient and not rushing them.
So it's not an empty space, it's a thinking space.
Precisely. Now, the source does caution, like you said, against silence that feels angry or rejecting or just plain uncomfortable. That's different. This is about using silence thoughtfully.
Okay. Next up, active listening. We hear this term a lot, but what does it actually involve? It's more than just not talking, right?
Oh, much more. Active listening is about being fully present and engaged. It means really concentrating on understanding the other person, not just waiting for your turn to jump in.
So what are the key parts of doing it well?
Our source highlights a few things. 1, observe those nonverbal cues we just talked about. What's their body saying? 2, understand the verbal message, not just the literal words, but the meaning behind them, considering their context, their culture.
Okay.
3, listen for any inconsistencies. Does the verbal match the nonverbal? Are there mixed messages? And 4, provide feedback. Let them know you're hearing them, maybe summarize or ask clarifying questions.
Sounds like it requires shutting down your own internal chatter quite a bit. The part that's planning your reply or thinking about your grocery list.
That's a huge piece of it. Quieting your own thoughts, your own judgments, your own filters, so you can truly receive what the other person's putting out there through their filters. It takes practice.
But the payoff is better understanding.
Huge payoff. It strengthens your own thinking too, and crucially, it lets the other person feel genuinely heard, like they're not alone with whatever they're experiencing.
Okay, active listening. Got it. Then the source groups several techniques under the heading clarifying techniques. This is all about making sure you understood correctly, avoiding those misinterpretations.
Exactly. Misunderstandings happen so easily. These tools help prevent that. The first is paraphrasing.
Paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Like summarizing in your own words.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Restating the basic content of their message, but using different words to check if you got the essence right. Like, okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, you're feeling frustrated because...
Got it. Then there's restating. How's that different?
Restating is more focused. You repeat back a specific keyword or phrase they used, usually with a questioning tone. If someone says, I just feel so overwhelmed, you might gently say, overwhelmed.
To encourage them to elaborate on that specific feeling.
Exactly. But the source warns don't overuse it. You can end up sounding like a parrot, just mimicking them.
Right. Use it sparingly. Okay, what else for clarifying?
Reflecting of feelings. This is where you try to name the emotion you seem to be picking up from their tone or nonverbals. You sound really disappointed, or it seems like you're feeling anxious about this.
So you're reflecting back the emotion you perceive, helping them maybe label it themselves.
Precisely. It helps people connect with and own their feelings. Then there's sharing observations. This is just stating what you notice, factually.
Like?
I notice you're pacing a bit, or you seem quiet today. It's not an interpretation, just an observation that can open the door for them to share more.
Okay. And exploring. That sounds like asking questions.
It is, but specifically open-ended questions, not yes-no questions. Things like, tell me more about that, or can you give me an example? It encourages them to expand on topics, especially useful if someone makes a really broad statement like, nobody understands me.
You would ask, can you tell me about a time you felt misunderstood recently?
Perfect example. Makes it concrete.
Okay, 2 more clarifying techniques listed here seem interesting. Projective questions and presupposition questions. What are those?
Yeah, these are neat. Projective questions often use what-if scenarios. What if you could wave a magic wand and change the situation? Or if you won the lottery, what's the first thing you'd do?
How does that help clarify?
It can uncover underlying wishes, values, or ways of thinking that they might not express directly. It gets at hopes and priorities.
Okay, and the presupposition question. The source calls it the miracle question.
Right. This one asks the person to imagine the problem they're facing is suddenly gone. Suppose tonight while you slept, a miracle happened and this problem was solved. What would be the first things you'd notice tomorrow morning that would tell you the miracle happened?
Wow, that really makes you think about what solved actually looks like, what changes you're hoping for.
Exactly. It helps identify concrete goals and motivations for change. Really powerful.
These are great tools. Definitely not just for therapy. Okay, let's flip the coin.
Yeah.
The source also details non-therapeutic communication. The roadblocks. The things we do, probably unintentionally, that actually mess up communication.
Yep. These are super common habits, often well-intentioned even, but they tend to shut down conversation, make people defensive, or just prevent real connection.
Okay, hit me with some examples. First one, giving premature advice.
Oh, we all know this one, right? Someone starts telling you their problem and you immediately jump in with, well, you should just...
Guilty. Why is that bad? You're trying to help.
You are, but it often cuts off their process of figuring things out themselves. It can feel dismissive, like you haven't really heard the whole story or trusted them to find their own solution.
So it's better.
Encourage their problem solving. Ask things like, what options have you considered? Or what do you see as the pros and cons of doing X?
Okay, empower them instead of solving it for them. Next, minimizing feelings.
Yeah, this is saying things like, oh, don't worry about it, or it's not that bad, or look on the bright side when someone is clearly upset.
Again, seems like trying to cheer them up, but...
But it invalidates their experience. It tells them their feelings aren't legitimate or important. It can feel very dismissive. Better to empathize. That sounds incredibly frustrating, or I can see why you'd feel hurt.
Acknowledge the feeling, don't dismiss it. Got it. What about falsely reassuring? Like, don't worry, everything will be fine.
Similar problem. It might be meant kindly, but it often rings hollow and dismisses their genuine fears. It shuts down further exploration of what they're actually worried about.
So instead,
Clarify their concerns. What specifically are you worried might happen? Or tell me more about what's on your mind. Get specific.
okay, making value judgments. That one seems obviously bad.
Yeah, telling someone they shouldn't feel a certain way or judging their actions or choices, well, that was a stupid thing to do. It just creates defensiveness or guilt and stops honest sharing.
So observe instead of judge.
Exactly. Make observations. I notice you're still smoking, even though you mentioned wanting to quit. Is that something you want to talk about? Versus, you really shouldn't be smoking.
Big difference.
Okay.
Asking why questions. Why are why questions problematic?
They can often sound accusatory, like you're demanding justification. Why did you do that? Puts people on the defensive.
I can see that. So rephrase.
Yeah, try open-ended questions focused on understanding the process or reasons. What led up to that decision? Or tell me more about the reasons behind, rather than just why.
Okay. Asking excessive questions. Too many questions.
Feels like an interrogation. Rapid-fire questions can be overwhelming and controlling. It doesn't allow for reflection or natural sharing. Better to ask broader, more open-ended questions or just use silence and let them talk.
Right. Don't pepper them. Now, this is interesting. Giving approval or disagreeing. Disagreeing, I get. But why is giving approval sometimes non-therapeutic?
It's subtle. Constant approval, like, oh, that's great, you're doing so well, can sometimes inadvertently lead the person to just try and please you rather than making genuine changes for themselves. And disagreeing directly often just shuts down the conversation or escalates conflict.
So what's the alternative to approval or disagreement?
Again, making observations and exploring their perspective. I noticed you went to that job interview. What was that experience like for you? Or, I hear you saying X. Tell me more about why that feels right to you. Focus on their process, not just your judgment of the outcome.
Understand their reasoning, not just agree or disagree. Makes sense. Last one, changing the subject.
Yeah, that's a big conversation killer. If someone is sharing something important or difficult and you suddenly pivot to talking about the weather.
It feels like you weren't listening or didn't care.
Exactly. It completely invalidates their feelings or concerns. If you need to change the subject eventually, at least acknowledge what they said first. That sounds really serious. We should talk more about that. Before we do, I just needed to check on X, or better yet, if it's serious, stay with it and explore it.
Wow. Okay, that's a really helpful list of things to avoid. So we've covered the process, the filters, nonverbals, good techniques, bad habits. Now let's talk about culture. Communicating across cultures feels more important than ever.
Absolutely essential. And the key concept here is cultural competence. It's not about knowing everything about every culture. That's impossible. It's about being respectful, responsive, and willing to learn about diverse communication needs and preferences. And it's an ongoing process, not a destination.
Okay, so where do cultural differences often show up in communication?
Yeah.
The source mentions communication styles.
Yeah, this is a big one. Some cultures tend to be more emotionally expressive, maybe more animated or intense in conversation. The source mentions Hispanic and Italian cultures as examples.
Okay.
Others might value more emotional restraint and indirectness, like some Asian or German cultures. And historical context, like that of African Americans, can also shape communication patterns. There's huge variation.
So what one culture sees as normal engagement, another might see as overly emotional or maybe even cold.
Exactly. It's easy to misinterpret if you're only using your own cultural lens. Another key area is eye contact.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this. It means different things.
Totally different things. In many Western cultures, direct eye contact signals honesty, attentiveness, but in some Hispanic, Asian, and Native American cultures, prolonged direct eye contact, especially with someone older or an authority, can be seen as disrespectful or aggressive.
Wow. So avoiding eye contact might actually be a sign of respect in some context.
Precisely. You can't assume. And touch is another big variable.
Oh, so.
Norms around physical contact vary wildly. Some cultures, Hispanic, French, Italian are mentioned, tend to be more comfortable with touching during conversation. Others, German, Swedish, British, tend to be less tactile. And some have very specific rules about who can touch whom, like in parts of India or Japan.
So best to be cautious with touch unless you know the norms or the person's preference.
Generally, yes. Be mindful, observe, and respect personal space. Some places even have formal no-touch policies. And the source also briefly touches on the experiences of the LGBT community, highlighting the importance of using affirmative and respectful language and approaches.
Okay. And underlying all this are cultural filters, right? We all have them.
We all do. These are our built-in biases, assumptions, stereotypes based on our own cultural upbringing. They influence how we interpret everything.
So how do we deal with our own filters?
Awareness is the first step. Acknowledge you have them. Then, consciously try to see others as individuals, not just members of a group. Practice empathy. Be curious and learn about different cultural norms. And importantly, ask people about their preferences rather than assuming.
Ask, don't assume. Good mantra. Okay, one last area the source touches on, communication through technology, telehealth, apps. This is huge now.
It really is. Telehealth, using video calls, phones, internet portals for healthcare has exploded. It's great for access, but raises important points about maintaining confidentiality and getting proper informed consent.
Right, privacy is key.
And beyond telehealth, just general information communication technologies or ICTs, they're changing how we share health info, track progress, all sorts of things, especially helpful for reaching people in remote areas.
And what about mobile apps? There seem to be tons for mental health now.
Loads of them, and they're being adopted really quickly, which is exciting in some ways, but the source cautions that we still need more solid research on how effective many of them really are.
And safety concerns too. Privacy again.
Definitely. Data security is a big question mark with some apps. So while they offer potential, users need to be discerning. The source does mention some specific resources from SAMHSA, that's the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration apps like Suicide Safe, No Bullying, things like that, which are vetted resources.
Okay. So technology opens new doors, but we need to walk through them carefully.
That sums it up well. And really, as we wrap up this whole discussion, it's clear that communication, it's complicated.
Yeah, definitely not simple. So many layers.
So many factors influencing it: personal, environmental, relational, cultural. And it's this constant dance between the verbal and the nonverbal.
But the good news is there are skills we can learn, like that active listening, the clarifying techniques, really focusing on understanding.
And recognizing those non-therapeutic habits in ourselves, the advice giving, the minimizing, the why questions, and trying to avoid them.
Plus, developing that cultural humility, being aware of differences.
Exactly. And again, these principles, even though we drew them from a nursing context, they're fundamentally about building better human connections. That applies everywhere.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As you go into your next conversation today or tomorrow, maybe just pause for a second. Think about your own filters. What assumptions might you be bringing? Are you truly actively listening or just planning your response? Are you noticing the nonverbals? Could you try one of those clarifying techniques if things feel a bit fuzzy? Or maybe just consciously avoid giving premature advice.
Yeah, maybe even look up one specific communication norm for a culture you interact with often. Just one small step.
Just being a bit more mindful. Because the better we get at this communication dance, the richer our connections, and frankly, our lives will probably be.